What if I told you that Ferrari is preparing a hidden change to its power unit that could suddenly cut up to 25 horsepower in front of Mercedes just before Miami? Would you trust that they can really pull it off, or do you think it's too late to save the season? Because what has been leaked in the last few hours is not a simple improvement. It is a desperate move that could change everything in Formula One. Ferrari's situation is not a perception. It is not an exaggerated narrative. It is a reality that has already been completely exposed after the first races of the season, where the SF26 has shown a structural weakness that goes far beyond a simple bad weekend. The problem is in the heart of the car, in the power unit, and the internal data that has been leaked confirms it without room for interpretation. Ferrari is clearly behind Mercedes in pure power, and that difference is not small. It is large enough to condition every lap, every overtake, and every strategy. We are talking about an estimated disadvantage of between 20 and 25 horsepower, a figure that in modern Formula One is directly critical because it not only affects the top speed, but also the way in which the car delivers power throughout the entire lap. This explains why Ferrari can appear competitive in certain more technical sectors, but completely falls apart on long straights, where it simply cannot keep up with Mercedes or teams using the same power unit. But the most worrying thing is not only the lack of power, but how this weakness is amplified with the new regulations. Here one of the most important and least visible concepts for the casual viewer comes into play: super clipping. This phenomenon is especially punishing Ferrari because its thermal engine does not generate enough base energy, which causes the hybrid system to have to compensate more than it should. And when it can no longer do so, the car literally loses performance in the middle of a straight line. It's as if the SF26 ran out of oomph at just the worst possible moment, and that has been seen repeatedly in early races. This is not a minor detail, it is a systemic problem. Because while Mercedes has been developing extremely efficient energy management for years, taking advantage of its experience in hybrid technology, Ferrari is in a position where it not only has less power, but also manages it worse. And in a Formula One where electrical energy can provide up to 350 kilowatts, this difference becomes a decisive factor. The consequences are already visible on the track. Ferrari is steadily losing lap time, especially at race pace, where energy degradation and the inability to maintain power delivery become more evident. It is no coincidence that even Mercedes customer teams are beginning to show more solid performance in similar conditions, which makes it clear that the problem is not in the chassis, it is in the engine. And this is where everything changes. Because Ferrari has understood that it cannot wait, that it cannot continue developing progressively while its rivals advance, and that is why it has decided to activate an emergency plan, taking advantage of a unique opportunity on the calendar, the break before the Miami Grand Prix. An unusual period that has allowed them to reorganize resources, focus engineers exclusively on the power unit, and, above all, completely rethink their approach to energy management. This is not the Ferrari of other seasons that introduced small improvements every weekend. This is a Ferrari on the ropes, forced to react aggressively so as not to be left out of the fight from the start of the championship. And the most important thing of all is that what they are preparing is not a simple update. It is a direct attempt to change the balance of power in Formula One in a matter of weeks. This is where everything takes a radical turn because Ferrari has not only identified the problem, it has decided to attack it from multiple fronts at the same time, in what is already internally considered the most aggressive improvement package of its season, and everything is focused on a single objective: transform the behavior of the power unit before Miami. The first and most important thing is to understand that Ferrari cannot make horses out of nothing in such a short time, but it can do something equally valuable: recover hidden performance. And that is where the key piece of this entire plan comes in: the new energy management software. We are not talking about a minor adjustment, but a complete reprogramming of the hybrid system that controls when energy is recovered and, above all, when it is released. Ferrari has detected that it was losing efficiency at critical moments of the lap, especially in the transition between curves and straights, and this new system seeks precisely to eliminate those invisible losses that end up costing whole tenths. This change has a direct impact on the famous super clipping. Ferrari's idea is to delay that moment in which the car runs out of electrical power on the straight, redistributing the energy more intelligently throughout the lap. In other words, it is not that the car is going to have more maximum power, but it is going to be able to maintain it for longer, and in Formula One that can be the difference between defending a position or being overtaken without the option of response. But Ferrari has not stopped just in the software. The leaks suggest that they are also working on internal adjustments to the power unit to improve the efficiency of the heat engine, seeking better energy conversion rather than a direct increase in power. This is key because although it does not completely eliminate the disadvantage against Mercedes, it can reduce it enough so that the rest of the car, especially the chassis, once again takes center stage. And here a very important detail appears. Ferrari has assigned a specific group of engineers solely to this problem. They are not distributing efforts, they are not balancing priorities, they are concentrating talent on a single mission. This tells us that within the team they consider this to be the critical point that defines their current competitiveness. Furthermore, there is a strategic factor that we cannot ignore. The break before Miami has allowed something that normally does not exist in the middle of the season. Real time to test, analyze data and simulate solutions without the immediate pressure of competing every week. Ferrari has used this period as if it were a mini preseason, refining every detail of the energy system with the data collected in the first races. However, this whole plan has a very clear limit. Because even if you optimize energy use, even if you improve efficiency, even if you reduce the impact of super clipping, the basis of the problem remains the same. The heat engine is still behind. And that means that Ferrari is playing a very fine line, where any improvement must be perfect to really make a difference on the track. What Ferrari is looking for in Miami is not to suddenly become dominant. It is something much more strategic. Close the gap enough to re-enter the fight, force Mercedes to react and change the dynamics of the championship before it is too late. But this is where the great unknown that changes everything is born. Because if this package works, Ferrari might have found a way to hide its biggest weakness. And so we come to the critical point of this whole story. Miami will not be just another race on the calendar, it will be the first real verdict on whether Ferrari still has options to change its destiny this season or if, on the contrary, it has already been condemned to pursue from too far away. Because all this plan, all this technical deployment, all this effort concentrated on the power unit, is summarized in a single question. Can Ferrari transform efficiency into real performance on the track? And this is where the pressure reaches its peak because we are no longer talking about simulations, nor factory data, nor internal promises. We are talking about going head-to-head with Mercedes in real conditions. If the improvements work, the impact can be immediate. We won't necessarily see Ferrari dominate, but we could see a very clear change in its behavior. A car that stops shutting down on straight lines, that maintains power delivery for longer, that can defend and attack without being exposed at key moments. And that, in such a tight grid, can mean recovering several tenths per lap, enough to completely change your position in the race. But if this happens, the effect goes far beyond Ferrari. Because at that moment Mercedes would lose one of its greatest competitive advantages, and Formula One would enter a completely different phase, where the fight would be balanced again and where every detail would make the difference. Ferrari would not only be closing the gap, it would be sending a direct message. They are still in the fight. Now, the other scenario is much harsher, and also more likely than many want to admit. If Ferrari arrives in Miami and the difference is still evident, if the car continues to suffer on the straight, if the super clipping continues to appear at key moments, then there will be no more excuses. It will be clear that the problem was not only one of management, but of foundation, concept, and design. And at that point, no quick update will be able to save the season because development in Formula One has limits, and when you are behind on the engine, recovering is not a matter of weeks, but of years. That's what's really at stake here. Ferrari is not only at stake for performance, it is at stake for the direction of its entire project. Because Miami is not going to define who wins the championship, but it is going to make it very clear who can still fight for it, and who is already racing against time. And that's right where this story gets even more interesting. Because what happens in Miami could trigger much bigger decisions within Ferrari that no one is seeing coming. And in the end, it all comes down to something much simpler, but much more decisive than it seems. Ferrari has already identified its problem, has recognized its weakness, and has reacted with one of the most aggressive plans that we have seen in recent years in Formula One. They have opted for optimization, for squeezing every little part of its power unit, for finding performance where it seemed like there was no longer any. But now comes the moment where there is no longer any room to hide. Because Miami is not going to be just a race. It is going to be a definitive test. If Ferrari manages to make these improvements work, if they manage to reduce that power deficit, if the car stops suffering on the straight and begins to behave like a true contender, then they will not only have saved the start of the season, they will have completely changed the narrative of the championship. They will return to the fight, put pressure on Mercedes, and show that they still have the ability to react in this new era. But if they don't achieve it, if the difference remains, if the problem is still present, if the SF26 continues to show those structural limitations, then the reality will be much harsher. Because it will mean that it was not a problem of adjustments or management or time, but a much deeper problem that cannot be solved in weeks. And at that point, Ferrari would not be fighting for the championship. It would be trying to understand when it fell behind again. So the big question is no longer what Ferrari has prepared. The real question is, when Miami arrives, will we see the beginning of their comeback, or confirmation that this season has already slipped away from them? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.